Cool. I never sent that. All right. Hello, hello. Are we recording? Good to go? Perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Today, we're going to talk about Excel. So we're going to talk about some basics of Excel. I'm also going to share something here so you can see what I'm doing directly. Also, feel free if you'd like to make a copy of this. I'm going to share it in the chat right here. This is just a sheet with some kind of dummy data here. Let's take a look. And essentially, this is, well, the dummy data is the 2018 Olympic hockey teams. So we're going to go over that. But let me share my screen here. I'm going to share this window for all of us to take a look at, and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about as I walk through this. Now, as we go through Excel, there's several things that we're going to cover today that are pretty much, I would say, the most widely used. So one, what is Excel and Excel versus Sheets? So we're going to go into that. We're also going to talk through how to create pivot tables and then also pivot charts as a result of those pivot tables, because a lot of people like to use Excel for reporting and looking at different reports and consolidating that. So we'll go into that a little bit as well. And of course, as you have questions, please go drop in the chat. We have Jessica here. She's going to help us go through any questions. She's going to shout them out to me as we have them. So please feel free to ask as we go through. There's a lot of great things that Excel can do. But mainly, it helps us either organize data or help take a look and share data of what we're seeing. So I am going to share here. There we go. All right, so you should be able to see my window here. Are you able to see this Excel training sheet right up here? Perfect. Okay, should be able to see it now. Are you able to see it in the window?
We can see it now.
Awesome. Okay, and if you were able to see some of the trainings regarding what we can do in Microsoft Teams as well, it's fantastic. You can actually do live reporting right in here. So I'm going to be able to work in the window with all of us, but of course, you can feel free to make a copy of this spreadsheet as well as we move forward. Okay, so first and foremost, Excel versus Sheets. So Google Sheets is actually modeled off of Microsoft Excel. There's a lot of similar functionalities, and essentially, what it is here to do is it helps us organize, format, sometimes sort, and then also visualize data to some extent. So it's a widely used tool and essentially is made for spreadsheets. And it allows us to basically mark up data in certain ways. We'll talk about that a little bit, conditional formatting and things like that. But it'll also will allow us to add in different formulas and different things that can help us format this. Now, if you're very familiar with Google Sheets, the one-to-one from Google Sheets to Microsoft Excel is actually pretty spot on. There's a few formula things that are a little bit different, and then Excel actually has even more functionality. Talk about that a little bit too. But is everyone ready to get started? Okay. So as you can see, first and foremost, I have some data here, and like I said, this is the 2018 Olympic hockey teams, just some sample data that you can see here. And for right now, we have pretty much only US and Canada. So it's our North American hockey teams, as you can see. And what we have here is essentially what we know as rows and columns. So of course, we have our rows that are numbered, our columns that have alphabetic values on them. And essentially, this is organizing the data in where there's headings at the top and then it goes down. Now, I know sometimes people will organize data the opposite way, where there's almost like what it's considered almost like headings on the left-hand side, and then the data goes from left to right. But the reason why it's great to go from top to bottom, as you see here, is because it allows us to organize it in a way that's easy to scroll and easy to search as we go forward. And visually, it can keep scrolling down and keep some organization up at the top. So the first thing I'm going to do, just so I can really take a look at everything, is I'm actually going to go to click View. And I'm realizing now that you're not able to see this. Let me do a reshare. Let me actually share a window or a tab, because I think that'll give you a better view here. Okay, so I'm going to show this tab instead. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to freeze some things. So I'm going to freeze my top row here. Actually, let's do the top row and the top column. So that allows me to start, whoops, there we go. See if we can freeze it. Freeze top row. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to do top row, and that allows me to move around and move down through the data and actually look at that. And what that can help me do is if I'm trying to search for something really quickly, or trying to look to see if there's any consistencies, or if I want to look and see, okay, what's going on with Troy Terry down here, I can say, okay, what's his, what's his hometown? And instead of trying to search through and see all these different fields, I can see it at the top here. And what that does is it allows us to, again, start to make it easier to look through data. Now, what I may want to do is I may want to say, okay, this is great and all, but maybe I want to sort this so I can see everyone that is from, Colorado, and see if there's anyone else that's from here. So someone like Jessica, from currently living in Colorado, let's see if anyone's like her here. I'm actually going to go to the sort and filter. I'm going to hit a filter here, and then I'll be able to sort where they're from. So I'll do sort A to Z. I'm going to do see everyone's, just so y'all can see what I'm doing here. And I can say, oh, okay, great. There's 2 people from Colorado. That's great to see. I do not know why they abbreviated this data this way, but there we go. But there's a couple other things that I can do to make this even easier, because sometimes when you're looking at all these rows and you're scrolling through and you're doing all this stuff, I may want to conditionally format and say, let me actually highlight anyone who's from Colorado. And so what I can do is, in case I'm going to add additional data, I can look at this. It's going to select everything from those rows down. Or if I only want to select this table, I can do that too. It's really up to you. This one takes a little bit longer. There's a couple tips and tricks there, but we won't get into that just yet. And what I can do is I can click conditional formatting here, and I can start to highlight different rules as we go forward with whatever it is. So I can look at text that contains. So maybe I want to look at anything that's COLO period, which is apparently how they did this. So if it contains COLO, it's going to go ahead and do anything that contains that COLO, whether it has a period or not. So I hit done, and you'll notice it highlights those two. Now, if I were to just do anything that contains,
Hey,
let's
Kayla.
go edit. Oh, yeah.
I'm so sorry. For some reason, we can only see some of your screen. Like I can't see the far left or the far right.
Let's see. Does that help at all?
It helped a little bit.
Oh, it might be you might have to adjust your window. If you resize your window, does that help at all? Expand or contract it?
Yeah, it looks the same. Is anybody else getting the same? Can you see 100% of her window?
I'm not able to see 100%.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So let's do this. Where does it cut off and start? Let me see if I can just share the whole window. Share window. What about this one? Is that better or same?
Oh, yeah, we can see it now, the whole thing.
Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. Thank you for that.
Wait, you just put it back though for some reason.
Oh. Ooh.
I guess I can stop raising my hand. I keep forgetting you have to unclick it.
No, that's good. Is that better? How that is?
No, it's the same.
Weird.
It's very odd. Yeah.
That is weird. That is odd. Okay. Why don't I share, I'll share my screen and then we'll go from there. So let me stop sharing this. And let me just share my whole screen here. And I feel like that'll be just easier. Okay. All right, there we go. We're gonna have a little meta matrix moment here, but okay. Is that better?
Yes, we can definitely see everything.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I know it looks kind of massive. It seems a little excessive with how big my screen is right now, but okay. So with that, as we can see, highlighting the COLO and the conditional formatting. So anything in Excel, like when you do formulas or conditional formatting or whatever it is, anything like this is going to look for the exact value of what you type. So anything containing COLO is what it's looking for. If I were to just change that to CO, it would then, again, once I hit done, it's going to highlight anything that has C and O in it. So it is very specific to whatever you're looking for. So you want to be conscious of that if you're saying like, oh, this formula should work, but it doesn't, or this conditional formatting should work, but it doesn't. Always go back and look at your text and make sure it's exactly what you're looking for. And same data, if your data doesn't match, so like say this was like COL space O period, it wouldn't pull that. It wouldn't pull that because it doesn't match like whatever it's trying to do. So it's just something to be conscious of. There's additional things that you can do to help with that, or whatever little tips and tricks to like help identify that and build larger formulas. But for the basics and troubleshooting and to go quick and fast, that's going to be your best bet, is just to check that. So in this use case, I actually want to see everyone who was born in 1990. So I'm going to go ahead and hit 1990. So anything that contains that, I'm going to hit done. And as you can see, I don't see anything here because what's happening is this entire value is more than just like 1990. Obviously, it's like not a text thing, it's a number thing, it's a numerical thing. So what I can do is I can do date occurring or something like that, and then do like a yesterday, or I could do a specific date or whatever it is. So again, with Excel, you may have to play with it to learn all the different ins and outs, but it is very specific. The great thing about Excel is it's so common. There's so many YouTube videos and different tips and tricks out there. So if you're trying to do something specific, don't hesitate to go search for it and say, how do I do this in Excel? Like, you literally ask your search engine the question of what you're trying to do, and likely someone else is trying to do it and there's something out there for it. But speaking of questions, I'm going to pause there. Any questions on conditional formatting?
I don't have anything in the chat.
Okay, so I'm actually going to delete this one, and just to show you all once more as well, there's other types of conditional formatting that you can do, just so you can see. You can do a new rule that's actually a custom rule, like we were doing here. You can just do anything custom that you can possibly imagine. You can do top and bottom rules, so you want to see like maybe the top 10 of something, and you can also see the top 10%. So if I click this and I hit done, it's going to show me the top 10 of this. So you hit sort, and from there you can sort by color, whatever that looks like. So this is great. So for example, if you have a table of data, maybe of clients, and you want to find everyone who is located in a certain zip code or in a certain city or a certain state, or everyone who you closed a loan with, in the last 90 days, like whatever that is, Excel is going to be able to help you find that very quickly. Now, obviously, a CRM, like some of you are using Salesforce or what have you, that's going to be even easier. But Excel, if all you have is a spreadsheet, there's a lot that you can do very quickly in this. So it's a great thing for us to see. So for example, I took all the top 10 BMI, I was able to sort that, and I could see, okay, here's like the top 10% of people in terms of BMI. And then I can see bottom 10 or something like that. So that's essentially how conditional formatting can work. Now I'm going to go ahead and clear all the rules from the entire sheet because we're not going to use that for where we're going next. Okay, so conditional formatting, a very widely used tool within Excel. The other thing that you may notice is a lot of times the formulas are used in Excel. So the great thing is over the years, they've built formula builders. So it makes it super easy for you to go in and you can click this formulas tab up here. And you can go in and you can insert different functions. You can do some auto sums or auto averages. Like for example, if I want to do auto average, it's going to take the average of whatever is above it. So you can see it automatically selected all of those, and you can adjust that if needed. And you'll notice O2, which would be O2, to O97. So O97, so automatically selects that. And I can look at the average. And so now I know the average BMI is 24.94. For this group of people. And so the great thing about this is it really does give you a lot of different things that you can do and play with. The other thing that you could do is date and times. You can look up, I want to know this date and time from this day. So you can say like, okay, from what their date of birth is to today, you can look at what their age is and calculate this automatically. So like for example, 1986 to today, to 2022, is that 36? Yep, it looks like it checks out. But if this data, which is stagnant right now, so we'll see this is 36, there's no formula here. If this was 2027, that's not going to update automatically. So sometimes people will actually put formulas in here, figure out some of the ages. This is where you can start to look up all of these different formulas so you can start to build things, and it'll walk you through how to do that. Again, YouTube is great for this, and using your search engine is great for this because there's so many articles out there. I'm not going to go too deep into formulas right now because what happens is you usually need a formula in the moment that you need it. And so if I go through all these different formulas right now, you might be like, that's great. And then when you actually need it, you're like, what was that formula again? And you're going to look it up anyway. But essentially, formulas can be super useful to quickly calculate certain information. And then also to do what we're about to do, which is create pivot tables and pivot charts and reports and things like that. So I'm gonna pause there. What questions do you have on formulas? Or are there any questions that you're seeing?
Nothing in the chat yet.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So now is the fun part. One of my favorite parts, which is pivot data, basically. So I'm going to do pivot tables and all those things. And from this, you can actually build quick reference sheets that you can kind of point to and look at. But you can also start to build dashboards in Excel itself. And so it allows us to consume data. So a lot of times there are people who are really good at consuming information visually. So they can't look at a table and be like, okay, I can see there's this many people or whatever it is. They have to sort it a certain way or look at a certain way or highlight certain things or potentially even see it in chart or graph form to actually see this as something that they can use. So for example, we have all of these like charts and things here, but I want to quickly see how many of our players are under the age of 30. Or I may want to see how many of our players have a body mass index of 27, or how many are 5'10". So what I'm going to be able to do is quickly see those numbers and get those totals. So again, we go back to some of our client data. We may see how many people closed a loan on this day, or start to look at, okay, if I have loan data for the last 30 days, how can I quickly see the ups and downs and ebbs and flows of how many loans were closed on each day? And so you can start to really use that either as predictive things, if it's like projected loan closing dates, or you can use it as kind of historical data where you can see, okay, this is how many loans close on this day. So those are examples of how you could see this. Same with it. We use this in our marketing team for social media metrics. We can see over time how something is performing. So we look and we see, okay, like this post really hit on this platform around this time. If we do a similar post like that, do we get the same effect? Do we get the same thing up and down, up and down? And so it allows us to build massive audiences over time because we're learning their behavior as well. And sometimes visually is the best way to do that. So let's get right to it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit insert. And here you'll see the pivot table function. So I'm going to hit pivot table. And it gives you some examples. So this is actually a newer function, again, as Microsoft is becoming more of a like a client-centric product. They're adding more of these features, like suggesting things for you, smart tables, things like that. But I'm actually going to build my own. So I'm going to do this on a new sheet. So I have sheet 1 here. I'm going to start a new sheet. And I'm going to have it build it or put it here so I can build it myself. So similar to the actual table, there's columns and rows, and there's also values, which is the best part because it's essentially you can get like a summary, and then of course filters. So I want to see in the 2 countries that I'm in, so Canada and the US, how many of each height do we have? And so I have height here for rows, and I have country for columns, and I'm like, great, I have that, but it's not actually telling me how many of each. And so I also want to put height here for values. And this is going to give me the count of height. So now when I look here, I'm going to pull this to the center here just to make it like a little more front and center if I can. Oops, nope, apparently I can't right now. There we go. I don't know why that's not working. Anyway, okay. So that's very strange. Okay. So what we're going to see here is that Canada has 0 people that are 5'1", but the US has 1 person that is 5'1", and our grand total is 1. And then I can also see, if I look at grand totals, that 5'9" and 6 feet even, those are our 2, I guess, most common heights that we have between the US and Canada. But it could also be different for the US. So for the US, that's going to be 6 foot. And for Canada, that's going to be 5'9". And so it allows me to take this table of data that has a lot of numbers and a lot of things going on and quickly see exactly what I need to see. And so for people, again, who are trying to really stay on top of some of the things that are happening with their clients, for different leaders in the organization, for people who are trying to stay on top of the metrics in relation to their projects or to their deliverables, it allows us to see quick summaries of what's actually going on. Now, if you're able to, you do this in a strategic way where you're seeing the things that you always ask questions about, the things that you always wonder. It's set up this way. And then as you load more data into the pivot table, it just constantly is refreshing and updating. And so we do that in the business development space, then also, like I said, in the marketing space, where we are constantly updating this with different data that we can put in and summarize and put that out. What questions do you have on pivot tables and building these so far?
I don't have any questions in the chat, but so I wanted to reconfirm. You said that if you add more data to that sheet 1, it automatically updates into this pivot table.
Yeah, so as long as your pivot table, so I'll show you here. Let's take a look. Okay, so as long as your pivot table actually runs past where this data ends, so you'll see it ends at 097, you can do it at like 01000 or something like that. And that's going to run, it's not going to pick up any additional data, but now as I add here, so let's say I go, so let's do this. All right, so in my sheet 2, let's say I have one person at 5-1 in the US. If I went in here, and where's my 5-1? Let's say I did this. Let's say I have a second person. I'm going to add in here. Oop. Very weird. That's happening. Okay, so I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do someone in the US. Oh, it's because I'm still in my pivot table edit mode. Okay, let me get rid of this. There we go. That's better. All right, so now that I have someone in the US, let me say that I'm going to add someone in Canada, and I'm going to say Canada, and let's just pretend like this is a different person. I'm going to be 77. Okay, so I have this new person, and we'll say that, oh, there's Kayla. We'll say their name is Jackie Barnes. Sure, why not? So now when I go back to this sheet, it should update automatically as I refresh it and refresh this table. But this is going to give us where we have USA 1, unless I did not save those changes, in which case you'll notice that it's the same. Let's take a look. I may not have saved the changes in the pivot table. There we go. Okay, change data source. Oh yeah, I only did 97. Okay, let me put that back at 1000, like I said before. I didn't save it. Okay, there we go. Now we have Canada as 1. And when you refresh this again, it should, oh, because I didn't spell Canada correctly. Hey, look, we also got a new table, or we also got a new column out of it because I didn't spell Canada correctly. So that just goes to show you that Excel picks up exactly what you say it does, or what it wants to. And now, actually, this gives a perfect example. So now that it goes to 1000, you may want to get rid of those blanks. So what you can do is you can take that filter of the country, and you can actually start to get rid of the blanks of whatever you want to look at. So when you filter out certain things, you can get rid of, like, okay, I want to see all this, but I don't want to see, blanks on this or whatever. So you can go here, and you can get rid of whatever the filters are. You could sort by value. You can add a filter, whatever it might be, just to aggregate your pivot table a little bit more. Great question, though.
Yeah, thank you. And we do have a question for you from Corey Burns.
Yeah.
Do you know if Excel Online will let us publish, embed specific tabs or fields like the pivot table in other places, effectively using the pivot table feature to build an online dashboard?
Great question. So, in terms of publishing in other places, are you saying like you want to actually take and publish the sheet somewhere specific, or you want to like copy it from a sheet and then put it on like a PowerPoint or something like that?
Hey there, Kayla. So this one's a little bit specific. Google Sheets will let you publish like a web page, the specific tabs, or an entire workbook. What I haven't been able to find is if Excel Online will let us do the same thing.
That's
and if we can do that, then we could stick it other places like in Knowledge Library.
That's a great question. I haven't used Excel Online a ton in a while. So when I last used it, that wasn't a feature that I was very well versed in, but I'll take it as a flag and a takeaway for us to look up and see if that is a feature that is similar to like what's available in Google Sheets. That's a great question though. I know Microsoft also has Power BI, which is essentially like a better reporting software, similar to like Tableau, and operates similar to Excel as well. So I don't know how limited they would make their Excel publishing capabilities with them having Power BI in their product suite, but it's something for us to look into for sure. Great question. Any other questions out there?
Thanks, Kayla. Yeah, Corey Meredith. So 2 Corys in a row. That's the question. Corey says, this is less of an Excel question and more of a Microsoft question. Is there a shortcut similar to Google that allows for easy creation of copies? Example, Google, you could type copy in the browser to update.
Oh, that's a great question. So, I've actually been exploring this. I haven't found something yet. The reason why I've been exploring this is because we had an LO who was publishing, it was like a calculator that they built on TikTok, and they wanted people to be able to use that as a copy, and we couldn't find a perfect way to do it. So the way that we found around it initially was that there is a view only setting that you could do, and then people can go in and basically save as like a new copy of it. So we haven't found one yet. If anyone in the audience knows of one, please let us know. I've been trying to look online and troubleshoot if that's available, but we haven't found a perfect solution for that yet. So I would love to hear if someone else knows.
Yeah, Corey Burns, you mentioned something. Do you want to elaborate on that?
So I did dig into this a little bit. So far, the only workaround I've found is we have to save the file as a template file, and then IT can add it so it shows up as a available template to make a new file from in Excel or Word or the corresponding doc. And then when they open that, it will actually create a new copy of the document. So
Nice.
it's not nearly as easy to share as the Google Docs version, but it is doable. There's just a couple extra steps in between.
Nice. Sounds like we're going to be building a pretty robust template library, Corey.
Yes, I think so.
Ooh, okay. Any other questions out there?
No more questions in the chat.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this version history here. And I'm going to see if I can go back a couple seconds ago. All right. I'm going to go back to 5 minutes ago. And I'm going to go to restore. So I'm going to restore this back. Also, if you ever need to restore a document, there's the way that you do it. Okay. So I've reverted our changes. We're back to where we were before. And next, I'm going to take this it's into a chart. So you can make just regular standard charts, which essentially means I take this data and you can select it or whatever you need to do. And you can make essentially a chart out of it. So I can go to select the data, I could insert a chart, and maybe I'll look at the recommended charts and see what they have for us. I'm like, oh, okay, I can look at average height, men and women. I can look at average age. I could look at frequency of age to see how frequently they're coming up. So you can do things like that. But notice this is based on pivot charts at the top, which we'll get into in just a second. And then there's also just standard charts. So standard charts are going to be a little bit more static. And you can see it's going to be similar to this. So let's say insert frequency of BMI. So it's looking at one column and it's basically saying like, okay, how frequently is this particular value happening? And it'll give you that frequency. And if you go into the actual chart, it'll tell you, exactly how it's formatted, what data it's looking at, what values it's looking at, and then what's on the horizontal axis, and then what's on the vertical axis. So looking at the horizontal axis here, then the vertical axis here. And you can also customize this, which is really a great thing about Excel here, is you can make it all Arial if you wanted to do that. And then you could, make it bold if you wanted to do that, and make it all kind of showy in different colors and match with our brand colors if you wanted to. So there's a lot that you could do there. So let's say I had our standard colors was actually our brand colors. You can pull down themes to make these colors, our brand or whatever it might be. And so you can start to format things and make it look very, beautiful and all these things. And you can start to build essentially a dashboard. And so what I would usually do is I would build a separate sheet. I would say, okay, instead of, oops, that's sheet 2. Not that. Instead of sheet 3, I might say, okay, I want to name this one dashboard. And I would start to build reports directly on here. And so if you wanted to, you can even copy and paste this report. So I could say, okay, or cut and paste this report. I'd be like, actually, I want this on my dashboard. And this is the first of my many reports that I'm going to build. And it's going to look beautiful. And maybe this one is, some other color. Maybe it's purple, because why not? because where we are, maybe this one's purple and then other ones are blue and then various other colors and things. So you can format it and actually make a dashboard full of a bunch of charts. So you can open a single dashboard and see all of these visualizations versus sifting through the data every time you look through it. And so that's the beauty of charts and what they can offer us. So that's a standard, more static chart. Now you can always update the data set, which basically means like where it's pulling from. So this is pulling from O. If I wanted to have this pull from M, which is a different set of data, I could do that. I could say, let me pull from M, whatever to whatever. I also just realized that I just changed this on the chart and it kind of yelled at me. So that's okay. I'm going to leave that there. But if I build this chart from scratch, you can change like where it's actually pulling the data from and what the data set that's looking at is. So as you build these and as you get comfortable with these, essentially just remember there's just different thing that it's pulling from. Like I said, right now it's pulling from height, or I'm trying to trigger it to pull from height. It could pull from BMI. It could pull from, hometown. It's just a matter of what data you want to actually pull it from. So I'm going to do that. All right. So that's the initial part. I'm going to undo that because there we go. The other part is pivot charts. So pivot charts allow us to actually dynamically change the chart based on what we're looking at. And you can do a couple different things. You can actually search your pivot table. And if you wanted to, you could create a pivot chart from this. Or like we did earlier, you can select all the data again, as we see here. And you can say, all right, I want some sort of chart. And I actually want to do a pivot chart. And the pivot chart is going to immediately do two things, which is create the pivot table and then also create the chart that follows it. And so now as you adjust your pivot table, your chart data is going to change as well. And what's great about that is you can start to add different things like slicers and different things like that. So I can go in here and I can start to add additional things that allow me to slice and dice my data. So if I go here and I go to my pivot table, I can insert a slicer, and maybe my slicer is a country. So it makes it look even better if you're all on a dashboard. So this was a dashboard here that we're building, and I can start to see, okay, I have this chart and I have this data, and instead of like going through and filtering all of this and saying, oh, I only want to see, US, or I only want to see Canada, I can just click here, like just show me only Canada, or just show me only US. And so again, it allows you to start building these interactive dashboards that help you see exactly what's going on with a given chart or whatever it might be. And so it's a really great tool to use when it comes to pivot charts, because you can make something super interactive, super easy to see, and then you could share that with other people. So to Corey's point, if you can publish it, or if you can just share the link and show other people. So for example, if you're putting together a report for some executives, or even a report for some clients, or a report for some business partners that you're trying to use, and like, hey, let me show you how this works, they can actually go in and start to utilize and break it down and look at the different trends that are happening. Or you can use it for yourself to make it easier for yourself to break down data. So to pause there, what questions do you have on pivot charts and slicers?
No questions in the chat.
Okay. Okay, so those are, the primary things that we wanted to cover today. Before I wrap up, I wanted to leave some time for open-ended questions and topics. So is there anything else that you'd want to learn about Excel that we did not cover here today? Any other things that you'd want to learn about what Excel can do that we didn't cover here today?
Nothing in the chat. You guys are welcome to raise your hand or pop in if you'd like.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we can break from this. I do want to thank you all. If you do have questions to go forward, please don't hesitate. There is another Excel session that dives a little bit deeper into the functions of Excel that's happening in a couple weeks as well in relation to loan originator. So one of our capital markets team members is going to be walking through that. So you can take a look at that one as well. Going to be going over some similar functions as you see here, but may dive over into specific details that you may want to see. But that is essentially Excel in a nutshell. Again, there's plenty of resources online in regard to Excel on YouTube, and also if you search. And then we also have our business innovation team adding some resources to the knowledge library as well. So keep a lookout for that. But with that, if there's no other questions, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Kayla.
Thanks.